Thank you so much for coming on today. How would you describe a healthy relationship with money and why does that matter?
So I would describe a healthy relationship with money, one that considers two sides of the relationship. So just like there's two sides to a dollar coin, there's two sides to our relationship with money. So one is the practical external relationship that we all kind of go to, which is things around like having a steady cash flow, spending less than you earn, accumulating wealth, cash flow, budgeting, investing, wealth protection. So all the things that are external to us. But then the other side of that dollar coin is the internal relationship that we have about money, which is really essentially what we think about it, our inner beliefs, sometimes unconscious, some are conscious beliefs, our emotions that are attached to money, and then our behaviors. So, and our identity as well. So how we see ourselves in terms of wealth and what we believe about money. So it's really how you think about it, how you feel about it, which drives your habits and behaviors. So that's how I
Mm.
describe it.
And would you say, the internal plays over the external, or do they both kind of interlink together? Which one, if you were to weigh one up more than the other, what would you say?
I would absolutely say the inner dynamic. So that relationship about how you think, feel, and behave with it. So that really is the foundation. If you kind of think about having a good, strong financial foundation, that foundation is our money psychology. So if that's challenging for you, or there's some dynamics that are a bit challenging, it makes it really hard to work on the external when you're constantly getting tripped up by your money psychology. So that is definitely the first place to start if you're not in the current financial situation that you'd really like to be in.
Mm. And so, to add to that, if there is someone right now in a current financial situation and they've been there for a while, might have progressed on to potentially where they want to go to, but then they drop back down to where they've been. They know that there's some sort of money psychology going on. However, they're unclear as to what it is. What would you say is a process for them to identify what's going on for them?
Yeah, so a really good exercise that listeners could do is to write out their money story. And that might look something like, what's the earliest memory that you have around money? So maybe you were 5 or 6 years old and you got birthday money or Christmas money, or maybe it was pocket money or school banking. So just have a think about what was the earliest memory that you have, and then consider what was the emotions that came up around that surrounded that. Depending on the event, were there family members? What was their response or reaction to that? And so you look at your first as 5 or 6 years old, and then you go on to your next one. What was the next memory that I had around money? Something at school, maybe other kids had all the cool toys and clothes and I didn't, or whatever that is. And then you just keep going year after year as long as you can. So 7 years old, 12 years old, your first job, getting pocket money, moving out of home, all of those things. You just, what do you recall as those experiences or life events that you had relative to money? And then again, exploring those emotions. What were some of the narratives or the mantras or things that you heard your parents say? Like for mine, it's like, money doesn't grow on trees, like turn the electricity off when you leave the house. So what were those things? Because those repetitive things have formed neural pathways in your brain that operate on that default. So one common trap that I see for people is we just operate on default. We're not actually conscious and aware of some of those financial decisions that we make.
Mhm.
And we make many, many financial decisions every day. And it's about, is your 7-year-old self driving those decisions and making them for you? Or is it your fully formed, conscious and aware adult self? So going through that exercise, which is something that I take clients through, is when you've finished it, you'll kind of see patterns and themes.
Mhm.
And so it's about having a look at, and what I typically know to be true is whatever those patterns and themes were that an individual experienced under the age of 15, those themes and patterns will continue in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, and 50s. And the cycles and those patterns just continue. So if you're wanting to break those, it's about being able to identify it first. So if we can name it, we can tame it. So that's that first exercise that can be really helpful to explore your own money psychology. How did you experience growing up? What did it feel like for you?
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your passion into, becoming a money coach, having, a background in business and finance, and then what drove you into this journey specifically.
So I did an accounting degree at university. I decided that accounting wasn't for me. So then I moved into investment advice and financial advising, which I really loved. And I did that for 16 years. I had my own practice here in Adelaide. We had 26 staff, and it's such a fortunate and privileged to be able to help people with their money. But I was always curious around why people do what they do with money. So I did some external study around psychology, and I just asked questions like that to clients just to be really curious and open around what money was like for them and what actually drives their habits and behaviors. And then I came to the conclusion that I really wanted to help people on a different level, because here in Australia, the cost of financial advice can be quite prohibitive for a lot of people. It's, costs thousands and thousands of dollars to see a financial advisor. So I thought, if I can in some way get people financial advisor ready, because we're not taught at school basic financial concepts of managing money. So I thought that would be a really good path to take in terms of helping people with their financial literacy and education. Then what I uncovered was it starts earlier than that financial literacy and education. It's really around our money psychology, because that drives so much of people that are good with money versus people that are a bit challenged by it. So then I did some study in the US, because money coaching, it's more is founded there more. And so there's a lot more money coaches out there in the States. So I studied with them and decided, yep, this is really what I want to do. It's just helping people with their relationship on a completely different level than that external financial advising side. So that's kind of my journey through that.
Amazing. Yeah. I think, when we talk about the psychology, I think that really is the baseline for any behavioral change, right? Whatever section of life that we're looking at. So I think helping people identify that, it's awesome because they will probably find that whatever stories that they've got in their money section are probably similar stories in other areas of their life.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess, I've been exploring a lot around success at the moment. I would love to hear your thoughts on, what you've uncovered with finance and how that relates to success and fulfillment.
When I talk about financial success or creating wealth, I think it's a really individual thing to define. So what does financial success actually mean to you? What would you need to see in order to feel financially successful? And it's going to be different for everyone. So some people, it's going to be the European cars and holidays and the big houses and the high-paying job. For other people, could look totally different. And so for me, it is around having autonomy. So if I can make choices in the way that I spend my day, that I can be there for my kids when they were younger, just, leaving so I could pick them up from school, and just kind of have those choices in life. So I was doing what I was doing because I wanted to, not because I had to. And so that was kind of my definition of financial success. So yeah, that's kind of my view on creating success. Is really just thinking about how first you define it, because that's kind of your guiding path then as to, well, what are the action steps that I need to take or goals that I need to put in place to actually achieve that, and then setting those out and doing them.
And when does it become a limitation for us?
In terms of what?
So we might have all these external goals that we want to achieve, whether that's materialistic things or whether that's just having more freedom, really, to choose the way that we want to live. However, when we are spending a lot of energy trying to get to those, how can one recognize that maybe what they've set for themselves is a little bit too high of a standard for this moment that they're in?
I think it comes down to those internal conflicts that we have. Okay. So if I can take one, for example, perhaps someone is really wanting to have that high income and work really hard to achieve that. But internally, their biggest goal is quality time with my family. So you can see how there's an internal conflict there. So it's going to be like brake, accelerator, brake, accelerator. I want to earn the high income, which my belief is if you want to earn a lot of money, you got to work hard for it. So that's one subset there. Some people grow up just believing that you need to work really hard to have money. Whereas my son is 13 years old. He grew up with watching YouTubers and influencers earning millions of dollars by posting videos on YouTube. So he has a very different map of the world around what it takes to earn money.
Yeah.
Not a lot. So that's kind of the first thing. So say we're talking about someone that grew up seeing their parents work really hard and you've got to put in the hours to earn a lot of money. So that's the goal that they've got set there. But the internal goal that they have is, I just want to have quality time with my family. But then that's been taken away because of the external goal. So it's really important that you examine and understand your values and your internal goals to make sure that they're aligned with your external goals, if that makes sense. Because if they're not aligned, it's going to be really hard to achieve that, or it's going to be really hard and exhausting. Like you said, it's just using that energy, but not in an efficient way.
And I guess coming back to whether it's aligned to you or whether it's aligned to what society expects or what's, you know, culturally been driven around your world. I guess, you know, in addition to that, like you talked about, you grew up with a certain type of a money story, your son's grown up with a certain type of a money story, right? And I can relate that back to my parents, for example, where, you know, a lot of my money stories come from them. However, as I've been exploring my way of being and the way that I want to continue on that money trajectory, having those conversations can sometimes be really difficult because they're so ingrained in their way of thinking because that's how they've had to live life for a very long time. And so what would your suggestion or recommendation be to be able to deepen those relationships?
I think it comes down to anytime you're having a conversation about money with someone else, whether it be a family member, a spouse, someone you work with, a friend that you know, those conversations about money are always a values conversation. And so like our values are so important to them and we'll fight to the death, right? So we'll defend our values no matter what. So we just want to be really mindful when we are having financial conversations with other people that it's deeply entwined with their values. So I always take the approach of coming to these conversations with curiosity rather than judgment, because we've all got our own values around what we should be using money for. Oh, that's a waste of money. Why would you do that? Whereas for someone else, it's like, this is so important to me. So we always want to come from a place of curiosity. So I'm curious about that. Could you tell me more about what led you to that financial decision? So we just want to come with a lot more compassion and curiosity around money rather than putting our own judgments or beliefs on that. And one of the reasons why is that there's three most predominant emotions when it comes to money. Do you know what they possibly might be? Three biggest emotions that people experience relative to money.
I would say probably things around fear, loss, and power, maybe.
You're close.
Control.
So fear is the first one. So everyone has financial fear. So actually understanding what your loved one's financial fears are, they're massive drivers. The other two most common emotions around money are shame and guilt. Fear, shame, and guilt. So when we're having conversations with other people or we're wanting to influence them to take other directions when it comes to their financial decisions, we need to understand what's going on underneath the surface. And for a lot of people, it's either fear, shame, or guilt, or maybe the whole trifecta.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I've thought about fear and guilt, but I've never really thought about how that probably still drives their way of thinking. So that's a good insight. Thank you. So when someone's trying to get to, a stage of financial success that they want to, or that they see for themselves. And they've done certain things. We talk about personal assets, diversifying portfolios, collaborating with others. What would you say if someone's already on that journey? What is their next step?
The next step. So it's then really about so you've done all the practical work. And sometimes what I see though is that our body and our mind doesn't actually keep up with our current financial situation. So if I explain that, say that you grew up with not having much money and everything was really tight and there was scarcity. Quite often people will do what they need to do to achieve those goals, to be financially successful, to accumulate the wealth, to save more money, invest that money, use it wisely, have ETFs, share portfolios, all of the things. But their body and their mind is still stuck in their scarcity mindset. So even though externally they look financially successful, on the inside, they're still having the fear that it could all be taken away from me tomorrow. I could make the wrong financial decision and lose it all, or it doesn't matter how much I accumulate, I never feel like I have enough. I've got to keep striving.
Mm.
So I think for people that achieve that external success, it's about actually examining, do I have that full relationship with money that is both external and both internal? Do I have joy with that money that I have? Do I have generosity? Can I share it? What are the internal emotions that you have around your financial success?
And I love it that you brought this up, because I'm all about human potential, right? And so we can have all these external factors, or have all these internal limiting beliefs, but how can we intertwine both together so that we are feeling more fulfilled as a whole being, right? My question to that is, where is it that we can identify some of those misalignments when we're looking at money, for example, when we're looking at success stories, the stories that we have about what success is? Because sometimes, and I've often seen this, with people that are close to me, or even people that I've observed, that they get to those success levels. However, that success wasn't really theirs. And what I mean by that is the success that they portrayed to be that was going to make them feel successful was something that society had put around them. And so, they were kind of looking through that filter because they had no other awareness. So breaking away from that, because that's sort of what their trajectory has been, whether they grew up in that, or whether they know for them to get to that stage, that's the part that they've got to follow. However, it's not internally aligned until they've reached that stage. And so why does that happen? And what have you noticed about that?
So I do see that, dynamic playing out quite a lot. And I think you answered it really well around, or identified that quite often our goals aren't actually our goals. They're society's goals. They're our parents' goals. But you'll get to a certain stage where you just don't feel fulfilled by them because they're not actually your goals. They're not aligned to your values and what you specifically want. Mm-hmm. And money is just a tool for us to live the life that we want. But if you've got that money and you're not actually living the life that you truly want, then you're not going to have that sense of fulfillment. So there's an exercise that I get clients to do, and I'm happy to share with you, and you can put it in the show notes. It's, have you heard of like the wheel of life, where you've got all of the different aspects of your life? You've got health, family, environment, all of those things. So I've got a financial wheel of life. So it's having a look at your tax, your income earning ability, your mindset, wealth creation, wealth protection. So you can actually go and do an assessment as to how do you score yourself in each one of these elements out of 10. And then that can be a really good starting point to say, okay, for 2026, these are the things that I want to work on because I haven't given that attention. And that's when we can kind of like feel a lot more fulfilled internally as well as externally.
I love it. Yeah, I love that you've broken down the financial side of things, because oftentimes when we look at finances, we look at all these different factors, but we don't actually score it um, to see like where are some of the things that could be improved and that we want to improve, right? Because there could be lots of things that could be improved, but if that's not where our calling is in that sphere, then there's no point putting energy in it at that point in time also.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Another thing that can be really helpful, if I can share, is there's 8 different money types, so different kind of dynamics or a collection. They're based on archetypes. So there's 8 different money types, and actually exploring what yours are, what your strengths and challenges are, can be really helpful. They can be kind of like a teacher as to what are some of the things that I need to learn or overcome as part of my journey. So we all have a financial journey that we're on, and it's just about understanding your particular dynamics that are a collection of these different characteristics and traits. And some of them can be really positive and others can be really challenging. So it's about, what do I need to learn on this journey in my life to overcome those and become the 2 most powerful money types, which is the warrior and the magician. And you kind of think of it like a masculine energy. The warrior is all about the doing, the taking action, the setting goals. But then the feminine side of that is the magician, just knowing that you are truly aligned to your purpose, to your values, and just having this really deep, grounded sense that everything's just going to work out okay.
I love it. There are 2 things that have come up for me as you were saying that. One, is there a summary of those 8 archetypes that you can share? And 2, how does the masculine, feminine energy in all of us, right, whether we're men or women, play in our world in terms of becoming more financially successful, and how that interacts with our relationships, as a woman, to be in that feminine space?
Great questions. Love both of those. So I'll address the masculine feminine one first. So it's really important that we have an equal balance of both. So, but what I see is a lot of people will come, even if they're women, they'll have a high masculine energy to them. So they've gone and done the work and they've earned a good income. They've learned what they need to learn about money, and they're really kind of tapped in with their inner warrior, that masculine side. But what's missing is that feminine actual part of receiving money and enjoying money and just seeing it as a flow of energy rather than something to accumulate and numbers in a bank account.
Mhm.
And on the other side, I see someone that is very, very feminine, and it is all about the receiving and the knowing, but they haven't actually done the external work around, what do I need to know about setting up bank accounts and using ETFs or share portfolios or investment properties or things like that. So they're out of balance. And so it's really just about finding that equilibrium on both the feminine and the masculine energies when it comes to managing money.
Mm. Interesting. So I guess from that, with someone who's more in that receiving end, what does that look like in a practical, um, presentation?
So the magician will be very much kind of like, they almost have kind of like magical thinking, like, oh, it's all just going to turn out, everything's going to be okay. But they haven't actually, they don't monitor their money. They don't know how much is coming in and going out. It's like, oh, it'll all just take care of itself.
Mhm.
Whereas we do actually need to have those structures in place around, okay, I'm building into my retirement, into my superannuation or retirement fund. I'm, paying off my mortgage so I don't have a lot of bad debt. I'm doing all of those practical things that I need to do rather than just wishful thinking, oh, it'll just turn out. Because you'll get to a certain stage in life and it's kind of like, yeah, money needs time to work. So the longer that we have time to allow it to compound, we don't want to leave it too late and just go, oh, I'm 40, 50 years old and I've just had this wonderful life of there's been an abundance of money, but I haven't really been putting a lot of it away for my future.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And so, what are your thoughts around manifestation? What would you say that action needs to happen in addition to thinking about, the vision that we want to create for ourselves?
So a lot of the work that I do is in the field of neuroscience as well as psychology. And so we've just got this amazing organ called a brain, but most of us don't know how to use it. And so the first thing I want to share is we're all manifesting or manifested the life that we're living. So it's about doing a stock take of, am I where I wanted to be? And if you're not, you've actually created that. You've manifested to most extent that life, those financial circumstances that you find yourself in. So if you're not happy or not comfortable with where that's at, now you can now retrain your brain. And after going through and having a look at what is my money story, what are those things that I tell myself that I need to rewire or relearn so I can be consciously manifesting rather than manifesting on a default and just ending up whatever those unconscious thoughts are that we have around money. And I'm happy to share a little bit around mine. So, and this is why I'm so passionate about the work. So as a financial advisor, you'd think I'd have my money all sorted and together. And whilst I earned good money, it never really stuck around. I just spend it really quickly. And I have some investments and things like that, but I didn't grow a lot of money. It was just there to spend, to have a good time with. And when I actually went through the process and did that exercise that I suggested to your listeners when we first started talking, I actually realized that some of my financial experiences were money was taken away from me. So when I was younger, I had a school bank account and the money was taken out of that account. My mum was a beautiful soul, very naive. She had someone come stay with us, and she just kept all her savings in a sock drawer rather than a bank account. And this person just up and left one day and took all of her money out of her sock drawer. So under the age of 12, I had two quite significant experience of money being taken away. So I hadn't even reflected on those at all until, I hit 40. And when I did this work and this exercise myself, I actually realized that one of the beliefs that I formed about money was, what's the point in saving money? Someone will take it away from you. And I had two significant relationships in my 20s and 30s. And when we broke up, we both had savings that we'd had together. So one was a marriage, one was a long-term relationship. Both of those, my exes took money out of my accounts, out of our joint bank accounts. So, and that was like, I manifested that from my unconscious, unaware thoughts and beliefs around money. So doing that work, I could just then completely turn around that around. It's like, I decided that at 12 years old, that what's the point in saving money? It'll get taken away. I'm now 40 years old. It's safe to save. I can protect my money. So that was my new mantra or belief that I had to consistently start to believe and then take action around that. So I set up new bank accounts and investments. And so it was that combination of that inner new belief around, it's safe to save. I can protect my money, but also doing the practical work around it.
And you talked about rewiring that process, right? So identifying was one of them. However, what I'm hearing is that mantra and actually taking action to, doing things slightly differently was your way to rewire.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What are some other rewiring strategies that you can recommend? There is so much in the neuroscience field about listening to different affirmations whilst you're asleep, but being in that theta delta waves. Like what are your, I guess, take on things that you've seen that has worked for the clients that you work with?
So it is that combination of mind and body. So understanding what are those new beliefs that I need to believe in order to have the financial outcomes that I want. And sometimes our brain is really tricky and our ego will come in and say, well, that's just not true. So it's about finding those new beliefs that are supportive of that. And so it may not be, so someone that's always been bad with money to just wake up one day and say, I'm really good with money. The brain is not going to accept that. So theirs might be, I'm learning to be better with money, or I'm willing to learn about money. So you've got to be really conscious and mindful of what are those things that you're going to start telling yourself that the ego is just not going to brush away and say, oh, don't be silly, Karen. That's just not true. So there's that part, it's the mind part, but then there's also the body. So actually, you can Google it. If you Google like emotion wheel, and you can see this wheel of all these different, it's just like a rainbow of emotions. Go on there and have a look at what are the 3 most common emotions that you have around money. And then it's about going into that meditative state and start to change some of those emotions that we feel in our body. So if I can take, for example, something like maybe someone's resentful or envious about money. So the antidote to that might be gratitude for what you've already got. And sometimes we're not going to have financial gratitude if we've always had that envy or there's not enough. So it's about what other areas and aspects of my life am I actually grateful for? And so then it's about feeling that and then projecting it onto your money. Because I believe one of our greatest addictions today is our addiction to our own emotional state. And if you start, yeah, so if you, I'm sure I borrowed it from someone else. But if you start to observe yourself over a day, over a week, what are those common emotions? And I tell you, just feel them over and over again. And I'm a big fan of the work of Joe Dispenza. And he says that you can have a mood. And so like I can be angry about money or something like that. So I can be angry, but then in an hour or so, I'm kind of over it and I'm kind of back to my normal state. Or if that sits with me for a while, it'll move from being a mood to a temperament. And it's like, oh, I'm angry the next day. And someone's made me angry about how could it be so wasteful with money or whatever that is. So it's moved from a mood to a temperament. And then if we experience that anger over and over, day after day, month after month, it moves from a mood to a temperament to a personality. And that becomes part of our identity. So if we don't like those emotions that we experience relative to money, it's like, how can we now manufacture those emotions in our body and start working on it like a muscle? So it's just like going to the gym. It's that repetition. You just don't build up a muscle after one gym visit. You've just got to do it on a regular, ongoing basis. And so that is just as important as those mindset, those new neural pathways. It's about our emotions as well, that emotional state that we experience when we're dealing with money.
And I guess to add to that, what would you say if we're looking at, for example, the Hawkins scale of consciousness, right, where you're talking about the lower frequency feelings and the high frequency feelings, in terms of making financial decisions, how important is it for us to be in that higher frequency state to make a decision that's going to be, well-rounded for us?
So if we think of each one of those frequencies is attached to emotion, and emotions aren't great decision-making tools. So you really want to be, sometimes we just need to park it when we're out of that state and leave it for the day. If it's in a shopping basket, if it's a purchase, like leave it there and go back tomorrow when you're a different emotional state, because it does make such an impact on our financial decisions. And it's really important that we have a framework for financial decision making. And I've actually got a blog article that I can share from you. There's like certain stages of making a decision and kind of just ticking through it. So having your own framework about, before I make any significant financial decision, I need to check off all of these things. Because our brain and our body can just like make decisions like that. But we want to switch over to that other part of our brain where we're looking at long-term consequences, because our brain is like hardwired for just, making quick responses. Back when cave person days, like our life expectancy was around 20. There weren't superannuation plans or putting away for the future. It was just like kill, eat, hopefully we survive another day.
Yeah.
So there's a big part of our brain. Yeah, survival. So there's a big part of our brain that operates on that when we make financial decisions. So we want to move to more of that creative space when we're making financial decisions.
So I guess for our listeners, for someone who's making or in the process of having to make a pretty big financial decision right now, and there are feelings of fear, shame, guilt, more of those negatively charged emotions coming up for them. Would you recommend them getting into a state of joy, love, whatever it is that's going to heighten their state in terms of whether it's spending time doing activities that they love, surrounding themselves with people that they love, whatever it is, and then re-look at what it's actually about? Or how would you recommend them to take that process?
Yeah. I would make sure that we're using our warrior and our magician. So the warrior is more of that practical thing. So it's about doing the numbers. If I spend this much or invest this much on this particular action, what is my opportunity cost, or what will I miss out on if I'm using those financial resources for this versus that? What are the long-term implications of one decision versus the other decision? Opinions shop. Do some research with trusted people, or do some research online. So what are the pros and cons for each side of that financial decision? So we're using that masculine part of our brain, that longer term thinking, and then couple that with that higher state frequency and vibration around doing those things that bring you joy, that spark your heart and give you that light there. And I really believe it's a combination of both of those things to make financial decisions. And obviously, yeah, is this financial decision taking me closer towards my financial goals or further away? It's always a really good question to ask yourself.
I love that. And so you talked about the warrior being the masculine, the magician's more the feminine. What are the other six archetypes that we've got?
The other six archetypes, yes. So let's start with the innocent. So the innocent is, we think of someone very childlike. So they don't really know what to do. No one's ever taught them what to do. So they don't have a lot of financial literacy. They also, on the outside, might appear like, yeah, everything's going okay. But underneath the surface of the water, they're like a duck just paddling. Like there's a lot of fear and anxiety around there. And a lot of innocence, just at the end of the day, just secretly I wish someone would just do all of this for me so I don't have to do it. Like just a parent or a partner. They can be really indecisive. It's like, it's just too hard to make a financial decision. So they avoid it and do nothing. And as I said before, time and money are this perfect power couple. So we can kind of find ourselves, when we avoid it for too long, it can cause more trouble. So that's the innocent there. If you kind of think of like a child, it's like, I don't know what to do, so I just kind of do nothing. And it can seem okay, but there's kind of like a fear and anxiety underneath that. So that's the first one. The second one is the martyr. So a martyr is someone who is so capable and competent, but they put their own needs last. They're so busy doing everything for everybody else. They're putting their own financial circumstances last. And we can do that for so long. And then we start to build up resentment. And when we do things for other people, sometimes there's strings attached, or judgment or criticism. So it's about the journey for the martyr is finding out, well, what are my needs? Because quite often we're so busy prioritizing other people's needs that we put our own last. And that can have really bad outcomes when it comes to our finances. If we're giving for other people, or maybe we're people pleasers, or maybe we work in a job and we just get quite resentful because we put so much energy and effort in, and we're really capable and competent, but we're underpaid. So it's kind of the journey of the martyr. The next one is let's go with the fool. So the fool is kind of like, you'll always like be able to pick a fool. They're kind of happy-go-lucky. Money's here for a good time, not a long time. They're the one at the bar. It's like, hey, I'll shout on my friends' drinks, or they'll be shopping and it's like, see it, love it, buy it. Like there's no filter in between. It's just kind of, money just comes and goes, and it's really here for a good time. They're also a bit of a risk taker, so they're willing to take a bit more risk. And when it comes to all of the money dynamics, we do want to take a bit of risk, but measured risk. So money kind of slips through the fool's fingers. The positive about it is they find it really easy to make money. So I was one of those fools. Like, it's like, yeah, money's easy, but it's here and it's gone, and that's kind of it, here for a good time, not a long time. So the fool's lesson and journey is around looking at the finer details. setting some goals to give your money a direction and a purpose, and just having some structure and organization around that hot financial mess that they tend to have going on. The next money type is the creator artist. So the creator artist has this internal conflict when it comes to money. So they are non-materialistic. They don't care about the fancy cars or the big houses. They're very much in tune with their purpose in life and their integrity. And they have this limiting belief system that if I do what I love, and they typically tend to be in those creative fields like writers and artists and musicians, that I'm in this field, so I can only own so much. I'll never earn a lot of money. And it's just one of those limiting belief systems that they have there. So their journey or their lessons is around coming to terms that, in a materialistic real world, we do need money to put a roof over our head, to pay for energy and food. And it's just about seeing the good side of money as well, rather than just the bad side. There's 2 more to go. So the next one is the victim. So the victim, you'll always be able to spot a victim if you know one, because you ask them, hey, how's everything going? And then they'll spend the next 5 minutes. Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Like, I thought I was going to get this pay rise and someone else got it. They don't even deserve it. I just started saving and getting ahead, and then the car broke down and the service was $3,000 and I couldn't pay for it. And then I got a parking fine as well on top of that. Like, they're just really attached to their story, their victimized story. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for the victims, because typically growing up, some bad things did happen to them financially. But the challenge is they were never able to heal those wounds, and they internalized, and then they become addicted to that story, and they need to separate themselves from that. Otherwise, it just goes down a spiral and becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you were talking about vibration before, they're really at that dense, heavy vibration, and they're stuck there. So the victim's journey is around exploring, what is my role and responsibility in the financial circumstances that I find myself in? And that can sometimes be a challenging thing. It's also about forgiveness, financial forgiveness. Those people or circumstances in your life that did you wrong, you need to find a way to forgive and move on. Otherwise, it's kind of like drinking poison, hoping the other person dies. It's not helpful. And then the last one is the tyrant. So the tyrant externally, they look very financially successful. They've got the cars, they're going on the holidays, they've got the big houses, a great job. So from externally, everything looks amazing. But internally, they've got this fear of lack of control. They quite often use money to control people, to control circumstances. And they have this chronic disease of not enoughness. So it doesn't matter how much they accumulate, how much they earn, there's just never going to be enough. And quite often it's that they don't feel enough themselves. And so they try and fill that void with money, but it doesn't always work out so well. So their journey is around feeling like they are enough. It's not about how much you earn or what you have. You're enough just being you, not what you have and what you do.
Yeah.
So I think I've covered all. Yeah.
And it sounds like, all of these can come across at different times of our life. And
Exactly.
if we can just understand the root emotion behind it, and start identifying where is my accountability in this, or where can I start changing things to move the needle forward.
Correct. Yeah, you're so right. All of us have all 8 money types within us.
Yeah.
But who's actually in the driver's seat making those financial decisions? Is it our warrior magician? Is it our martyr or our victim or our tyrant or our fool? God help us. So it's about understanding. And sometimes you can have 1 or 2 dominant ones. Sometimes there's a quiz that you can take on my website and you can find out your scores. Some people have like a combination of 4 or 5 of them. And that's when I know they're so conflict and confusion. Like they're kind of like here one day and then they change the direction. And it's really, really challenging. So it's about what are those lessons that each one of them needs to learn and overcome so they can really step into their warrior magician.
Yeah, and I think I've always been someone who's found all these quizzes really, really difficult, like personality tests, whatever you call it, right? Because it's so subjective with what is going on for you at the time. Especially for me, I find that, um, in a certain life phase, I might have answered those questions completely differently to another phase in my life. And so
Mm.
I think the important message with this is, yes, there are archetypes, there are structures and systems in place, which can help you identify what is going on. However, not getting it too attached to that is what you're going to be for the rest of your life, or that's what's going to show up all
Correct.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They do change and evolve, and that's all part of the journey. So you would hope that your money type does change and evolve. So those money types with the scores that you get, it's not who you are, it's where you are in your financial journey.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you. It's been fascinating to think about money from more of a spiritual, purposeful realm rather than just a physical space that oftentimes money is associated with, right? I want to touch on one last thing before we wrap up. Identity. Identity is a big thing, right? And so when we're looking at changing our identity, um, whether that's, our relationship with money, our relationship to food, shopping, whatever it is, that they all kind of come into the same category. What have you noticed that has worked for the clients that you've worked with in terms of identity shifting?
So, firstly, it's about being really honest with yourself around how do you see yourself relative to money. So, if I had $1 for every person that I heard say, I'm just really bad with money, I could have retired decades ago. And that's part of their identity. I am.
Mm,
So it's just first understanding and identifying what is my money identity first. And then if you don't no longer want to be that, what do I want to be instead? And then having a look at someone that has all those traits and attributes of what I want to have. How can I start integrating those into my own life? So, and that might be something like, rather than I'm bad with money, it's like I'm really good with money, or I take care of my money so it looks after me in the future, or I have the potential to earn a high income. It's what are those things that those people that have that perhaps believe, and then just start integrating into that. This is what I need to start believing.
mm,
And in order to believe it, we need to take action and do it. So, someone that is good with money or looks after it, what are the things that they would do every day? Maybe once a week, they would check in and have a look at, where is my money flowing? They would listen to podcasts on financial literacy, or how do I invest in shares or investment property. So they would take some action there. They would prioritize time for it and see it as an important part of their weekly activities. So it's just, yeah, it's about understanding where you are, what your identity is, how you want it to be different. What are those traits and attributes of a person that has those things that you want?
mm.
And then start having those standards for yourself. And it's amazing, just those small but significant steps. It's just like compound interest. Like you just do it and then it just starts to grow and grow and grow.
I love it. Thank you so much, Karen. If people want to find out a little bit more about you and what you've got to offer, where is the best place to find you?
So I have a website, womentalkingfinance.com.au. As I said, you can take that online quiz there. I also am on LinkedIn a lot as well. So I do a lot of financial wellbeing, particularly for employees and workshops as well. So yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Karen Eley, or at womentalkingfinance.com.au.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, well, this is where your journey of exploration continues. Please subscribe to the Lifeability podcast so that you can stay tuned when new episodes come online. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. The mission at Lifeability is to inspire you to create a more fulfilling life for yourself and improve your quality of life. So why not share this podcast with your loved ones and create a ripple effect together? Until next time, Asante Sana.